The final day of Kentucky's legislative session have come and gone. We look back and review of some of the bills that did not make it out of the House. Those bills are Senate Bill 270 regarding Juneteenth, National Freedom Day, and Senate Bill 63, better known as the Crown Act. Another legislative session has passed, and June 19th will not become a state holiday for government employees.
Senate Bill 270 would have recognized Juneteenth as a state holiday, meaning state workers would have that day off and state offices would be closed.
The bill was introduced to the Senate in February and got assigned to the Committee on State and Local Governments, but didn't make it past there. Another abandoned bill was Senate Bill 63, which is more commonly known as the Crown Act. The measure sought to protect people from various cultures from discrimination based on certain hairstyles.
The Crown Act is really just affirming that the hair that grows naturally from your head is the hair that grows naturally from your head, and you should be able to exist in public spaces with that hair without any discrimination.
But similarly to Senate Bill 270, this act was introduced in February, but also did not pass. Executive Director of the ACLU of Kentucky, Amber Duke, shared that she was disappointed in how the session ended, but expected this outcome.
So, it is disappointing to not see this bill move this session. It's also not surprising.
She says that although progress on these bills was not what she wanted, she does believe it's important to continue advocating for these rights.
We plan to go back to the General Assembly each and every year with our own priorities,
hoping that next session will have a better outcome for these bills if introduced again. Although these bills did not pass, others did, a few of which were Senate Bill 47, which legalized medical marijuana, and House Bill 5, granting a tax break to the bourbon industry. In Lexington, Lucy Bryson, WKYT.